tonight?
My nervous system's a little fried, but I'm
going to throw out a few numbers just to start, and it's a little bit of history by the numbers. In the year 2019, there's a 4chan image posted of sort of desolate office space that becomes its own phenomenon.
Technically, people figured out in 2024 it was a furniture store in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which was a renovation and becoming a hobby store. So that's what it technically is, but it's not very, it's pretty nondescript, so it's kind of cool.
And then in the year 2022, you are 16 years old when you post what I believe began as just a fun little VFX exercise?
Yeah, I mean, I had been like sort of swimming in the influence of having, I was, in 2019 when Backrooms showed up, it was sort of just treated as a meme, and it was a meme, and it went around for a little bit, and it was used, to sort of demonstrate the punchline of like, imagine how miserable it would be to end up in that place forever. It is, very much framed in like the original copypasta as sort of a force of nature rather than like a divine reckoning or anything. It's not like a place you go when you're harboring guilt and it tests you. It's very much phrased and by way of likening itself to a video game glitch as just sort of a immovable sort of force of nature that you can't negotiate with, and if it happens, that sucks. That fucking sucks. and so that's where it started, and so that was around for a while. It was in my brain. I was trying to figure out like what I even wanted to do at all in life, and I still am. And I had sort of grown up in the years around there and following, sort of trying to sort of build, something of the VFX driven film sort of scene on YouTube. So doing like some short films and stuff, and at a certain point after I'd been learning Blender for a while, the 3D program, I wanted to try, this was end of 2021, so it was inside the pandemic when I, really started Blender and liminal spaces as a term and as a sort of photographic genre, sort of became pretty prevalent, or at least talked about in a much more prevalent way. So I was like, my feet was swimming strangely familiar images with unnerving music and videos like that all over YouTube. There's just compilations of these photos, and so it was pretty widespread. And I kind of, it started from a simple place, and I'm trying to come up with a very cool, profound start to it. But genuinely speaking, it started because I wanted to just try to, explore or better explore and access, what itch I was feeling in my brain when I looked at that along with a lot of other people. And it was like, hey, how you can use Blender to try to simulate that environment and look around at it a little bit more. And just have fun with it. It's more, what I would consider a sci-fi convention, how this place might build itself, and like how it's very much like a made environment and all of its features, but when you inspect it or when you assess it on a more holistic level, it's like who would put stairs there, or who would make this particular construction decision here, and I found those sort of things really kind of stand out as details. And so again, that short, I thought it was going to flop compared to the other stuff I was doing at the time. It did not.
Not quite.
Yeah.
Is this correct? 15 million views in the first month?
Maybe might have better than me. Something like that. It was something that might have spent quite a bit. And I pretty much immediately, I think the same day, I put out the first short just because I've been thinking about it while I was working on it, and realized it was sort of connected to this other, very ambiguous, nebulous, but kind of thematically, clear project I had in my brain for a little bit. But again, it didn't get shit. It wasn't really well 16.
And that's the sync portion of that? Yeah,
and generally everything it ended up becoming, it sort of was the fusion of those two ideas, and then of course evolved in its own way. But pretty much from the beginning, I care strongly about knowing the ending, and so it's all kind of working backwards from that, starting at the furthest point from the beginning. So,
and then you've spent the last year or so of your life in Vancouver on this.
Yeah. What is it? It's the second. So May 19th was technically the first day I went to Vancouver, and it's been a year since then. We went into prep, film got greenlit, and we did like all of the development and posted everything all the past year, less than a year, and it's been like, and again, like I was saying earlier, it's like with some of like the best people I've ever met, and it's like really been really tremendously enriching. It was a fun time, and obviously it goes without saying that, you know, I'm a very, very different person and very different creative engine, and it was, I guess, like, it sharpened a lot for me, and I was grateful for it all.
Well, not to repeat this so much, because I know a lot of people make a lot of how old you are. You're 20 now? But it is extraordinary. I know. It is so extraordinary what you've managed to accomplish, not just in the series, but now adapting it into feature film.
I appreciate it. I think you know, again, a lot of circumstantial being able to, you know, benefit from everything that's on YouTube, all the information that's there, and having I guess just the time and ability to, you know, use programs like Blender and all that, and have a computer in the first place to sort of go down that road and figure it out. But you know, I give a lot of credit to all the people who helped get us off the ground and took a chance on it. And yeah, it's so many people.
Well, I want to get into the making of the film. There's so much to talk about. This is such a fascinating film to approach intellectually. It's such a visceral film to experience, as we all just did in a theater. It's also really, really funny. Chiwetel and Renata, can you talk a little bit about what first intrigued you about Kane's Backrooms world, the script, and the psychological journeys that each of your characters are going through?
Yeah, there was so much. I mean, it was, I didn't know anything about the Backrooms initially. And I knew a little bit about liminal spaces and how that was sort of, there was something happening with that online. And then, you know, I was sent this, you know, and an introduction to Kane's work, and what he created. And so for me, it was just like a sense of going down the rabbit hole, and really becoming aware of just how viral it was. You know, just how many people had been touched by this work. And then I specifically was really engaged with how Kane had created something that was so detailed, that just a world that was so full. I think we talked.
I do think when we first met, we started having a call, but now I'm talking about the season titles.
And the fluorescent, yeah.
just to break down for example.
Yeah, because that was really what sort of got me. It was just how conceived this world was, and I think that, you know, when you're working with somebody, you know, I think when you're working with a director, the joy of it is working with a director who really understands the world that they want to create. And so with Kane, it was that and just so much more. It was like he was sort of instrumental in the creation of the world, knew every corner of it. And that was incredibly fun to sort of play around in for me, and to try to understand his perspective. And then I kind of got the psychology of it. I felt it was really was rich. You know, this is a character who's very damaged and is trying to work his way through that, and is also in this conflict of what his mind is telling him about his own reality. And so all of those things reflected in the nature of the Backrooms was just very apparent to me, and I just was excited, engaged.
And Renata, I understand you were already sort of interested in the phenomenon of liminal spaces and the effect that these spaces have on our brains.
Yeah, I found some videos. I found some Kane's videos without knowing that it was you. And going into, just why it was a phenomenon and why people were so interested in how it affected me also watching them. And so when Kane called, I was also a little bit skeptical for that world. That was something so specific being made into a movie.
Good.
Yeah. Coming from the movie world now myself, I was, and knowing this was his first movie, I was, it kind of came down to our first conversation, like how you talked about this, how you respected that process from making this into something very specific and taking care of the atmosphere, and not making it into something plot driven or something that is usual horror movie that you see, but something that is like very specific for what it is itself. And yeah, that drew me in. And after that conversation, we were like talking about quantum physics and we were talking about all these like big themes in like 1.5 hours. I was so exhausted after that conversation, and I was like, yes, okay, I want to do this. And the character, for me, in being in a movie, I need to know that the world is, and the director really knows what it wants. But the character, what I found so scary, like I love architecture that has soul and detail, and movies that takes their time, like every art form that has space for the audience. And this world is the opposite. Because it's like the image of an effective world. Like everything is made simple to make it cheaper. It's a nightmare for me. And also the character really trying to figure out her own life and going in circles, trying to help other people, not getting out of their own loops. And actually getting caught in both that really horrible space, but also going in circles within herself was really interesting, like existential layer to that.
Do you think that Mary owes Clark a big effing apology?
No. He chose to become the monster. Like, no.
But he has proof.
You guys think that I should? No.
Mark, you play a very interesting figure in this world. You know, for those, how many folks out here watch, like are fans of the series, the YouTube series? So fans of the series know this organization called Async very well, and you play the face of Async that we sort of meet in this film. And through, I also love that his name is just Phil. Just Phil. And it's so interesting that we go home with Phil and see parts of his home life and see that he's just kind of a regular guy too. What was really interesting for you about this role and entering Kane's world in this way through that lens?
Yeah, I mean, I love that you have all this lore that's been going on for years, and then when you find out what might be behind it, you get to see that man's legs in pajama shorts with popcorn on his lap. And it's sometimes extraordinary is just extremely ordinary, I guess, when you look at it that way. And this for me was a really easy call to do this movie. I love working with first-time directors. It's one of my favorite things to do. I came up with my brother making $3 movies in my kitchen, so I felt a spiritual kinship with what Kane did as a young artist, discovering himself and what he had to offer. The producers have never told me this, but I had a sneaking suspicion that they probably wanted to surround Kane with people. I've produced a lot of first-time filmmakers, a lot of that, and I thought that maybe that was a reason maybe that wanted me around. And then I met Kane, and I was like, oh, he's way smarter than I am, and way more eloquent. And the thing that really struck me at our first conversation was, and I think you and the audience are getting a sense of this, is that side of Kane's brain that can hold all of this mythology, but then was really interested in the human stuff over here, and trying to find the balance of that. I'm turning 50 this year. I'm trying to figure that out, and I think he really had a handle on the dichotomy of that. Very young, you asshole, and that was just so exciting, and the idea to come in Scooby-Doo style into the movie, as Phil, and know that. Yeah, there's so much weight to it, and he's just some ordinary guy who might have fallen into it. Or is he? Or is he really good? I don't know.
Oh, well, that's a good question. Ben and Lupita, I so much because poor Bobby, poor Bobby, he just wants to end apartheid and probably, presumably, smoke a little weed. Yeah. And Kat, the most reasonable character in this entire film. Nobody listens to Kat. What was the fun for both of you in playing these characters and sort of imagining yourselves what you would do if, like, how would you react if you were trapped in their situations?
How would we react? I would probably react the same. I'd probably be like, no. This is the part in horror movies where they're saying there's scary noise over there. Don't go over there. And then everybody goes over there. I would be Kat in the situation. Be like, guys, we gotta fucking get it.
Oh God. Stay where it was. Yeah, I think it's an interesting, I guess that was kind of the, it took up most of the time first with Kane when we were kind of talking through, it's like, Bobby's decision to go through the door. And I think it's, I remember when I first read the script and the areas, Bay Area, right?
Bay Area.
And all the buildings are described look the same, the sky is always blue, there's all these things, and it's this quite like boring, sleepy atmosphere to it, and I feel like there's certain characters in this film that feel so stagnant, and Bobby is kind of a prime example of that, and a desire to explore this other side, and yeah.
Lukita, where do we think Kat is right this very second? Oh my God, we did. Okay.
She made it out.
Yeah, time operates differently. Okay, take us into the actual making of this film. What were your non-negotiables? That you have such a close relationship with fans of your series who are very detail-oriented. They're very, they have created such a fantastic, even sort of ecosystem of their own around your series.
Yeah, I mean, there's levels to it where, like, on one hand, you can go too far with just, I guess, overwhelming yourself with the lore. I don't love the word because it gets used in the lore. But I feel like on a project like this, when you're, coming from, again, this ARG-driven sort of place and, the influences that I had, I feel like, this kind of project, just as a general series, but also especially when it runs the risk of being, like, really ridden with, like, lore blows. And I feel like it's great to know your world, and it's great to have the information, that structures everything behind it, but I feel like it's, not worth a whole lot without a specific engine or without a specific application for those ideas. So I very much try to, and the people on my Discord server and stuff who are very, they will notice and are very, and I try to listen to them a healthy amount. I try to give them enough that works for them, but without fully steering into a super esoteric place, because they, they love to, hyperfixate on a blood socket moves a little bit to the left, or the tonality of the wall changes slightly, and again, a lot of the time those are specific narrative choices, like in a YouTube series, because again, you got a limited time and you can, most of it's CG, so you can really be quite flexible with everything. But in the case of this film, again, like I said, we did this in a year, and there's very specific timelines, and these are, there's a lot of people involved in making this, and it's very hard to maintain that level of absurd specificity over every tiny thing. So I'm sure there's some cars that are not 1990 June accurate. I'm sure there's some fire sprinklers and Captain Clark's which were manufactured a few years later.
Nobody looked at those.
Well, they will. They probably already have. But I want to do better. I want to be able to get but that aside, I feel like the point is, I guess, I just really want to be specific about making sure that the things that really do matter, and so, decently sized list. I want it, something that overlaps with tonality and aesthetic and the way we present this world. But a lot of it is also specific mechanics of how complex the Backrooms works, and just the broader world. And I'm very happy to say it's consistent with the series, and every I think discussable way, and I think totally it's pretty congruent as well. So.
Well, part of that is because you were so meticulous in your detail, even in pre-production, you were on Blender, trading files with your department heads, tweaking set designs, tweaking lighting schematics.
Yeah, I mean, like all the sets we built, and this has been around online for the past week, so it's like 30,000 square feet of this set we built in these 4 stages, and the way we shot it, we did all the outside world stuff first, so it was like half the shoot and the second half was inside. And it was like when we first arrived on the stage, the production office was connected to the stages. I just started, building the sets in Blender the way I normally would with a video. Of course, organized in such a way that it could be simplified and clarified for the art department. But we had, like you said, a really fun back and forth of being able to. I sent over these blend files, and they're able to look at these blend files, and they're able to interpret it in whatever way you need to, and sort of drive blueprints from it, and then very specific art direction from those files, including everything from like, again, the micro placement of certain objects, pillars, columns, light sources, the textures of like when we're using wallpaper and whatnot is all kind of decided there. So the more I could kind of do up front in like a 3-dimensional blueprint and hand that over to them, I felt like it sort of offered a lot of very specific interaction. It wasn't a back and forth because sometimes a pillar would need to be moved because like the fire lane here needs to be like a foot to the left or something. But yeah, and the same thing for shot listing. Jeremy Cox, he and I would go in Blender and he would like sit next to me and we would like work until like 2 in the morning. Like we had just like done location stuff, so we would scan all of our locations and I would rebuild them in Blender, and we would like sort of light it ourselves and sort of plan the lighting there like a couple months in advance. And then we would kind of, in some of the cases, like the kitchen's a big example. Like I started showing Jeremy how to use some of Blender, so he was doing it in his office as well. And so we were trying to like, it was a bit of like sculpting the environment and shaping the set in order to get specific shots we wanted. So we kind of
And make corners scarier.
I love corners. It's just a lot of it's hard to say like what dictated everything else. It's a lot of just little micro movements, all this kind of course.
But it really speaks to how very, very specific your vision was, from every step of the way, every shot, and it's so effective. We are running out of time, so I just want to do a little bit of like, I want to ask you a little bit about the fun little Easter eggs that you dropped in there. We also have there's so many great reasons. There's I think you have a Boards of Canada song that I believe.
I don't know. Yeah, it is credits track. Yes.
A new Boards of Canada song.
Yes, that's correct.
And I believe you were like staying up late during post-production to work on the score, which you co-composed as well.
Yeah, AO is, I don't know what it is.
AO and
Yeah,
But yeah, it was a there he is.
Yeah, it was a collaborative. It was a collaborative effort. I have to work on my brain that makes me like to be specific, and it extends to the sound obviously as well. And I feel as though this one is very. It's definitely more advanced sonic representation of what happens in the series, but it's also, I would say, like very congruent and true to all of that. So we had things were moving really fast moving into here, so we were basically sleeping on the floor of the studio, putting the sound and piecing together of this thing in the last few weeks. I'm very proud of how it sounds, and we're working on I'm refining it right now for the official soundtrack release, because I love touching those up and clarifying them in ways. It's a little experience beyond just a standard soundtrack, so there's some extensions and some bonus stuff in there. But
when do you sleep, Kane?
No, I nighttime usually.
I believe you also have some special friends and family in the audience here.
Yeah, I do. I have.
So shout somebody out.
Yeah, I've got. Well, apparently got my mom, my dad. enabled so much and was like the first point of contact I ever had with trying to, when I made those shorts and people started, companies were flooding into my inbox that I never had any kind of interaction with any of that before. He was like really the first person to, mediate and help me get my head around all that. My parents do as well. But seriously, thank you, Mr. Shadow, and thank you.
Love you, Kane.
Kane, your world premiere of your first feature film.
I feel like, well, you're, I feel like I've said enough.